I never thought it would happen again, but I was obviously wrong. I had been struggling with doubts and insecurity for some time, as the thought of actually communicating with someone still seemed very far-fetched. The previous evening I had already thought several times that I was ready for another conversation, a real contact if you like, and had hoped that this would become a reality the following night. Contrary to expectations, that didn't happen. To be honest, I hadn't expected it either. The next evening, December 31st, 2021, I had the most impressive experience of my life so far, which, unlike the first contact, I can't really put into words or even begin to describe satisfactorily, let alone explain logically. It was, in the truest sense of the word, incredible and absolutely overwhelming. The next day, I first had to put myself and my previous experiences in chronological order and mentally recover from the experience. I then reviewed the past few years and looked at some things in a new light. The whole thing started after I saw a strange video on YouTube featuring a deceptively real alien-looking creature. I then asked myself the serious philosophical question as to whether extraterrestrials might not be somewhere nearby and might even have been watching us for some time. How could you contact these intelligent beings, I asked myself. How would you contact people who were as advanced a billion years ago as we humans are today? If this is the case, the question also arises as to why they have not yet shown themselves publicly and made their presence obvious to everyone. I came to the conclusion that this is almost certainly related to rules and laws that are not entirely dissimilar to those of us humans and our governments. Intelligent species living together in advanced civilizations are guaranteed to have rules and laws that guide their coexistence in an orderly fashion and guarantee peace and security. If there are these kinds of laws, then there will probably also be laws that affect other civilizations that do not yet know about those beings and have a different level of development than they do. So, after seeing this strange video and realizing that it is quite possible that such advanced intelligent beings, extraterrestrial individuals, are nearby, I began, after much deliberation, to make contact. I didn't believe from the start that it would really work or that there was anyone at the other end at all, but I kept trying anyway, because it didn't really take much effort and it was anything but inconvenient. My contact attempts took maybe 60 seconds of each day, sometimes slightly more, sometimes less. In the time between watching the video and the first contact, nothing very strange or weird happened, apart from one incident where I narrowly escaped serious injury when me and two friends were more or less mugged. It was pretty strange. My opponent's fist stopped literally a centimeter from my nose and the attackers froze literally for a good 10 seconds, during which I and my companions were able to simply get up and leave the scene. This incident really bothered me and kept me busy for a long time, as I was not completely convinced for several months that I had survived this experience unscathed and even considered that I might be in a coma, as the experience was very unusual and I still cannot explain it logically to this day. Then, several years after the first attempt at contact on my part, the first real contact happened, which is not the subject of this article. After that, I still wasn't sure whether I might be imagining the whole thing, and my doubts about the meaningfulness of the whole enterprise continued to grow. The problem with my situation is that I know for a fact that the mental aspect can probably be imagined, especially since we can't even begin to explain the functioning and capabilities of the human brain, let alone understand them. However, another bug in the real world made me look up again and literally left me with a white question mark. I was visiting a good colleague of mine whom I wanted to introduce to forex trading. For this purpose, I had to install a certain program on his PC, and he insisted on doing this on his MacBook, as his other laptop was, in his opinion, junk and quite slow. When I asked how much RAM the slow laptop had, the answer was 8 GB. This should actually be sufficient, and I told him that this would definitely be enough for the program. However, he assured me that the computer was really very slow and that everything would take ages. I offered to clean the laptop properly first, defragment the hard disk, uninstall unnecessary programs, and deactivate non-essential autostart files. However, it was too much work for him, so he insisted on setting everything up on the MacBook. So we downloaded the app and he opened it, or rather, he tried to open it. Nothing happened. After easily 20 attempts to install the app or even just to open it, he wanted to download it again and try all over again. To do this, he wanted to move what he thought was the first faulty app to the trash bin. But the app could not be moved anywhere and simply remained unimpressed in its folder. This surprised us a little, but so far it was just an annoying bug or whatever, even if my friend was a little confused now, as nothing like this had ever happened to him before with his MacBook. This friend was also the first person I gave an insight into my tricky situation with the thought experiment and told him about my strange experiences. Shortly afterwards, the app could be moved to the trash bin, but now it was nowhere to be found. After a short time, it was back in its original folder and no longer in the recycling bin, without us having done anything. I then jokingly say that this was probably a sign to get the old laptop out and give it a bit of a tune-up, whereupon the file positioned itself in the middle of the screen without us doing anything, without opening. You could only see the icon in the middle of the screen and a white question mark appeared on it, which was the same size as the icon. Now we were both a bit creeped out and he let me clean out his junk laptop, which worked perfectly afterwards. Immediately after he told me that I could fix the laptop, the app with the white question mark disappeared and was now back in the trash bin. To say that he was quite surprised by this is an understatement. Another very strange action happened a few months later. I was in a real crisis again and kept thinking I was losing my mind. One evening, during a contact attempt, I literally threatened to throw the whole thing away and dismiss the supposed contacts as delusions and never think about it again in the future if I didn't win the lottery immediately, because I thought to myself that such advanced and technologically highly developed beings, if they existed, could certainly arrange this very easily if they only wanted to. At the time I was completely serious and I was sure that absolutely nothing would happen and that after the next lottery draw I could go about my normal life again without worrying about the supposed contact with extraterrestrial beings. That would have been a huge relief, but somehow also very disappointing. Immediately afterwards I sat down at my computer and wanted to go to my YouTube channel. Instead of my channel, however, I only saw a white empty page with a grey picture instead of my avatar and grey pictures instead of my banner and my homepage. I switched to my private channel where, incredibly, I found the same thing. I refreshed the page several times and switched channels, but none of it helped. Everything remained as it was, a fully loaded page with all functions, but everything had been replaced by grey emptiness, which could not be fixed by reloading and refreshing the page. That was the last straw for me and I started to cry uncontrollably as the whole thing was really beyond me and I was at the end of my tether and my common sense. I couldn't explain the situation, was desperately looking for a logical explanation for the whole mess and seriously asked myself what I had gotten myself into. I was also really sorry as I had only actually made this threat out of spite and on a whim, and money is normally not very important to me. However, I didn't expect a reaction of any kind. I was really sorry now and assured myself that I would never consider such a thing again, also out of the realization that it might not be easy even for the most advanced beings to influence a live lottery draw in my favor, or whether it is not even legally forbidden for them to do so, and thus the ability to do so would have been irrelevant from the outset. Immediately after my apology, I frantically clicked refresh and everything went back to normal on the first try. My avatar, my banner, my homepage, everything looked the same again. I have no idea how to interpret this experience or how something like this could possibly work, but this is exactly what happened. It should also be noted that I didn't say any sentences or anything out loud, so a hacker having a joke is no way to explain the whole thing. However, my doubts about my own sanity continued to grow and the whole situation started to really bother and unsettle me. What does it all mean? Let's assume that there are beings, extraterrestrial individuals, who have been traveling through the universe for a very, very long time and have managed to solve all the problems of civilization and enable every member of their species to lead a good and fulfilling life. Alien individuals who can grow very old and take great care of each other and their contemporaries because they decided a long time ago to make life more pleasant for all their fellow beings and to reduce suffering to an absolute minimum. Let us now assume that these beings have been observing and studying not only Earth, but all the planets known to them for a long time, as we will do when we evolve as a species and are able to travel to other worlds. This requires a lot of organization and long-term planning, as any scientific work requires. So if we assume that such extraterrestrial individuals can grow very old, then it is logical that such an individual will have to see and experience many things in his or her life that will challenge them mentally over time. Empathic action is an evolutionary advantage if you want to help yourself and others as a species, and empathy has had a very long time to become dominant, especially if positive action is seen as the main purpose of one's existence and improves the chances of being able to reproduce. If such a being lived to be, say, 3000 years old, which is certainly not the maximum possible, it could have lived through countless generations of humans. From the conquest of Gaul, to the Crusades and plague outbreaks of the Dark Ages, to the First and Second World Wars, to the first attack with nuclear bombs, to the dystopian surveillance structure of the Chinese government, and the oppression and displacement of people all over the world. How stressful must that be for a single, super empathetic person? How must it feel to have to witness the genocide of the European Jews and not be able or allowed to do anything about it? How must it feel to listen to Hitler's speeches? How would we humans view an alien Hitler who mercilessly murdered contemporaries of his own species in poison gas chambers? How strange would that be? How distressing can something like that be for an individual? How strange we humans must appear to outsiders with all our primitive behavior and annoying to dangerous characteristics. Even today, millions of people behave like primitive cavemen, bashing their skulls in with their clubs while they feel they're in the right. How helpless can you feel when you're almost certain that the human race is heading for its own philosophical demise and your own rules and laws forbid you to intervene? We are a tragic example of too rapid emancipation of higher intelligence mixed with the warlike instincts of our ancestors. Of course, there's always hope, but hope alone will not save us from destructiveness and selfishness. Unfortunately, I can't logically explain what happened, and I can't say with 100% certainty whether it really happened to me, but I have to admit to myself that there may be something more real to it than pure imagination and strange coincidences. I can't put the last contact into words. It was so overwhelming and all-encompassing. For me, it was undoubtedly the presence of an incredible presence with whom I communicated, trembling and breathing heavily in my bed. I couldn't fall asleep afterwards and was shaken to the core by what had just happened to me. I was shocked. The horror was written all over my face and, looking back, I don't know what words I can even use to describe what I experienced. Words are not enough to express how the contact went. During the experience, I repeatedly had thoughts such as, I don't know if I can cope with this, or I hope my brain survives this without any consequential damage. It is always different to how it is portrayed in films or conspiracy series. You don't hear voices, you don't speak out loud or perceive anything from the outside. It's just different. Unlike anything I've ever experienced, unlike any drug high or acid trip. It was indescribable, unbelievable and hard to cope with. I still have a long time to digest this experience and will probably have to process it for years before I can put it behind me. But I don't know if I even want to. Do I ever want to experience something like that again? I can happily do without it. I just made that up, and even if I hadn't, would you believe me?